Welcome, Diane. It's so
Thank
nice.
you so much, Lynn, for having me. I'm so delighted to be here with you and with everyone.
I'm so excited to have you here, and I wish we had about 2 hours because there's so much, and I want to just show all of our viewers your wonderful book, which I think is a must read after looking at it and reading through parts of it. It's really fantastic, and I just can't wait till this summer is over so I can get back to doing some of my reading. And your book is right on the top there of my list. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how, what your journey in life is. I noticed in the book, or I read somewhere that, even as a youngster, you were already quantum thinking. So I just wondered, how your life evolved so that you're doing the work that you're doing today with the quantum think system.
It's interesting that when I listen to a lot of other people and people who have been interviewed on A Bright Horizon, your own telesummit here that's going gloriously well, Lynn, that I think, gee, my life sounds so ordinary compared to, like, I didn't have the angel didn't show up to me, although I prayed, although I feel them around me. But, I didn't have one of these great, uh, I've had mystical experiences, yes, I know we all have, but I didn't have something so significant that I could say it turned my life forever. However, I did have always growing up, I was always very thoughtful. And I would think about, how did civilization get developed? And one day I remember looking in the mirror, and I think I was 4 years old or something in the house, and saying, pinching my arm and saying, what's this? And so I was always thinking about it. And I uh, followed that guidance, that silent guidance, throughout my young, early, and teen years. And I started to study different philosophies. I had an older brother and sister, and they were in college before me, and they would bring home their books, and I would look up existentialism and Plato and Aristotle and all these people. And then I got interested in Eastern philosophies, and I would sit and try to, practice hatha yoga. And so I was always on this kind of, seeker's life, we could say. And what occurred to me, to fast forward to the present, then I was always realizing that, I don't know how I knew this, but I would look in the world and say there's some kind of a discrepancy between the wisdom that we aspire to live. We all talk about it, that we are one, unity consciousness, love, the life of bliss and harmony with the earth and harmony with each other. And yet when you would read the headline news, it seemed like there's something wrong with this picture. So that was my quest, was to think, well, how do we go from merely knowing the wisdom, which has been around for thousands of years, and with our amazing new technologies, of course, we all know that we are, we can get any kind of, like, everybody's, putting forth, thank goodness, their genius, their expertise, and there's so much. But it's still, for me, Lynn, comes down to this. I have to live it. I have to be the walking, talking embodiment of this way of being, of this way of living. And so that was my quest. And what I discovered along the way is, as you think, so you become. Every wisdom teacher has said it. The Bible says it. The Buddha said it. The Upanishads of the ancient Indian philosophies said it, that what we hold in mind, our habits of thinking, what we hold in awareness, when I use the word mind, that's what I mean, our individualized form of consciousness that we experience as our own, even though we know it's connected to the all that is, infinite intelligence, infinite consciousness. that I came to this, when you master your mind, you master your life. So how do you do that? Well, my discovery was that we live in a universe of systems, and thinking is a system. And so I realized there were like these, at least, there are infinite number of realities that we all live in, but at least for the overarching sense, these two realities. One where we're playing out the roles that we've all been given by our destiny and choices in life, as a daughter, as a mother, as a father, as a teacher, as an accountant, whatever we do, as a politician. And then there is this other self that we refer to as our higher self, the self of wisdom, the self that has the greater knowing, the inner knowing. And so that was my quest, the other quest. How do we converge these realities? How do we expand the more limited one so that we're living in this more accurate, up-to-date, and expansive worldview? So the quantum think system, the intent of it is that we take a literal quantum leap in consciousness, because we've all of us, we have grown up under the more limited worldview of the industrial age. And that was a view that said only physical matter is real. So all of our developed world societal institutions are geared around the ordinary five senses, the either or, study the physical matter, the brain, but we don't learn about what I call the faculties of mind. So when we take this leap in consciousness and we learn the quantum principles, of which in my system I put together 21 principles and practices for the mind and awareness, so that we can not replace what the old worldview has taught us, but expand upon it and begin to integrate the wisdom so that we're living it. So I hope that answered the question.
It does answer the question, and I'm trying to. I think the question I want to ask you is just, why aren't we taught a lot of this stuff? I know about quantum physics in general. I went to school for 27 years or whatever, and it wasn't until about 4 years ago that I first started learning or hearing about the laws of quantum physics, which I think very much parallel some of the ancient spiritual wisdom. So I think a lot of people aren't even aware that there are these laws of the universe, and I just wondered, what do you have to say about that?
Well, when I look at quantum think is not about science. It's about how the discoveries of science shape the way we think. And again, it happens in a system, which is the good news, because when we jump systems at all, we're embraced by the system and it becomes very natural. But to answer the question, why not? Because, just to expand even on the question that you're asking, Lynn, which is a very important one, because people want to know, why are people, so heartless? Or why don't we learn what you're asking? Why don't we learn about these things that are so important to us in everyday life now, where the new worldview physics, the quantum physics is now, yes, verifying what the ancient wisdom has said. For example, that all is mind, right? But these other questions is, why are we closed to alternative healing methods as in general, as a culture? Obviously, a lot of people listening are not closed to it. But even if we're open, we're still very much conditioned by the way that the industrial age worldview taught us to think. So if you look at it, and I have a chart that I just want to look at in my notes just to give everyone an idea of it, because these depict a very different nature of reality. So I want everyone to then think with me as I'm just going over these characteristics, how this has conditioned our thinking. So I call it lovingly the old worldview, known as the classical mechanical worldview. And we're in the quantum worldview, the new worldview. So I call it old worldview, new worldview for short. So when you think about it, the scientists of that 17th century, when it began, the beginning of classical rational science, and they said, only physical matter is real. So this is what they studied. And they thought, if I could, the universe is like a giant machine. So when you look at it, you think, oh, well, if only physical matter is real, how did that affect our thinking and the way we relate to life? We are relating in the physical realm. We do look separate. We look separate from one another. We look separate from objects around us, or what we would refer to as our external world. Whereas from a new worldview, the scientists have said, no, the universe is more like a giant mind than a machine. So then how can we use that to affect our thinking? Oh, a giant mind. That means, and it's a universe not of solid physical matter made of parts that work in a cause and effect way, like the old worldview conditioned us. It's more like, oh, it's multidimensional. Things move in every direction, omnidirectional. It's a connective universe. What are we connecting to? An energy intelligent universe that we are like floating in a giant mind of which we have access. So when we say, oh, intuition, that's one of what I call the 5 natural faculties of mind: the power of intent, the power of intuition, the use of subtle energy, ability to tune in, transmute, transform it, use it, the power of resonance, to know that what we resonate, what we emanate, we attract, and that we can consciously generate the resonant field that we want to be moving in for ourselves. And meditation, which I consider more than just a practice, meditation as a natural faculty of mind, because when you're in that inner stillness, as we relate to it, when you're centered in that higher awareness, is where we have the clearest connectivity to this infinite intelligent field, and field of energy always in flux, informed by intelligence. So we're not going somewhere, we're connecting in. So to answer your question, why don't we learn that in school? Because in school, we are looking at the body as a machine. How did medical science develop from that? If you have something wrong with your hand, address the hand, but you're not addressing what in the rest of the body or the skeleton is connected to that, and how is it all affecting, and how does that affect the chemicals in your electrical connections. So this is the great news, is that, wow, we're in this quantum age. So again, why didn't we learn about quantum physics? And the interesting thing is, I didn't study quantum physics in school. I came across it by pursuing the spiritual literature. And along the way, I came across the Tao of Physics, the classic book by the physicist Fritjof Capra. And I looked at that and I thought, wow, that's where I first became informed. This is cool. The science is now converging and verifying the spiritual wisdom. Yay! This is great. Why? Because our society loves science. We believe science. So maybe, spirituality, that's a whole nother topic where there are many forms of it, religious and otherwise. But at least we can come to the science. So this is how I started to develop quantum thinking. I thought, well, if you could understand these principles from the point of view of science, then anyone can understand this. Anyone can relate to it. It's more than the understanding. So my husband, Alan Collins, who is my partner in everything in life and in business, and he is a master coach. He's a master quantum think coach and consultant. And we, you read in my introduction about the companies that we've dealt with, and I tell people this, they go, oh, well, how does anyone, how can other people understand, do you quantum think, your book and the system? I said, it's very simple, Lynn, because the wisdom that is universal in us, we connect to. You could say, and I like to say, the great paradox of being human. We're universally the same, and we're individually unique. That's where we get to purpose, which I know you and I are going to talk about. So when someone reads Do You Quantum Think, or they listen to the quantum think distinctions in the audio form that we have, or they have hear us speak about it, they're connecting. So the science gives them a framework that's more relatable, even though not everybody is familiar with the science, as you asked. And another way to answer your question is, well, when that science of the early rational science, they gave us genius, many gifts. It's not a bad worldview. It's just that we've moved beyond it. We've reached the limits of the effectiveness. We need all of what, well, I won't say all, but within ourselves. You think, well, okay, mechanical worldview, as I always say, I don't like to insult us, but in many ways, we became mechanical and automatic too, in certain ways. And so when you look at this, and you realize that what did that industrial age give us? Well, they looked at the data, collect the data, analyze the data, categorize the data. That gave us the discipline of the various sciences. So this has, going back to the silent way it's conditioned our thinking, is that even if we are born metaphysicians, we're on a conscious path, or we had some awakening along the way, we know we're here for conscious awakening and to realize ourselves in the capital S, that even if we know that, it behooves us to take a look at our thinking, because we're thought to think in separate parts. In corporations, they call it silo thinking, where the corporation is divided into, different business units and different accountabilities. And the people in that business unit, they're like this, not because they're choosing to be like that, but that's the context of the corporate culture. The context of the culture of looking is that, well, if you weren't studying science, then that doesn't come into your so-called radar screen of how do you relate to life. So again, what I have been blessed to be able to do and to be the vehicle of quantum think, which, by the way, I didn't choose it, it chose me. I didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I think I'll create a new system of thinking, but I did have an intent to discover a way that we could live it. So I thought, well, there's all this knowledge. If I could just put it all together, a little subtle energy here, a little bit of, managing your thinking and your thoughts over here, a little meditation there, and put it all together and show the connection between these cutting-edge scientific principles and the universal wisdom. Again, how did the people that we became our clients relate to it? Because it's universal. It strikes a chord. When you presence something in someone's awareness, And that is in each one of us. It rings true. And so there's no convincing. There's nothing like, I have a point of view and now I want to get it over to you so that you adopt my point of view. No. It's what I call in quantum think, what is the method of it? The art of distinguishing, a new worldview of learning. You bring something into your awareness in such a way that it alters your relationship to it. It gives you a more expansive view of it. It can, and when this type of a transformation takes place, it transforms the past, the present, and the future all together. So when I say, oh, we're conditioned by by a thinking system, and the thinking system is guided according to the assumptions, beliefs, ideas, notions of the prevailing worldview, then it's like, yeah, I could understand that. I get that deep within me. And I'll ask you if you get it. And then you realize, oh, and I could take that leap and take the expansion and just see, oh, here are the principles. And begin to integrate that in a more, in the forefront of my awareness, of my consciousness, so that we can begin living the wisdom proactively and what I say, quantum leap style, with instantaneous shifts.
Wow. That, I think that's just such a great answer. I was thinking as you were speaking about when I was starting graduate school, actually, or maybe it was in college, somewhere around there. But the prevailing view in psychology had been the classical behaviorist psychology, where, all you had to do was look at this chain of response and stimulus, and you could predict all of human behavior. So, and it's the old statement that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior.
And, that is such a great point that you're bringing up, Lynn, because I also studied, I had a double major in philosophy and psychology at the University of Miami. And because they didn't have consciousness studies at the time, now I'm aging myself, that I could, anyway, so that was the closest I could get was philosophy, but I knew that wasn't it either. But going through what you said, that's perfect, because we always hear the Hermes, as above, so below, as within, so without. Well, at that stage, and by the way, I don't think there's anything wrong with us. I think that's the only thing wrong with us is we think there's something wrong with us. To drop that, going to the past. But behaviorism, in that as a school of psychology, as you said, a stimulus response. That's a very big way, an important way that the old world, industrial worldview, conditioned a whole branch of psychology. Mm-hmm. Because, maybe you can, and we know the Pavlovian dog thing, but maybe you can use that. Of course, the advertising industry uses that to great advantage, that stimulus response, put 1,000 impressions in front of someone and, okay, I'll buy it. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But it behooves us to have an awakened awareness so that we're not a victim of conditioning, but we can make a choice given what the circumstances are in the world. So in behaviorism, that's what, that's all they were dealing with. Well, how do we change behavior? How does someone become happy? How does someone give up the past? Now that gave us, I would say, some detrimental conclusions, because one thing I left out about the old worldview. So collect the data, analyze the data, make conclusions, and proceed to live from those conclusions as if they are the, quote, absolute truth, the way it is, fixed. Now, very importantly, and I consider fundamental to quantum thinking or being able to relate in a quantum worldview at all, is to realize that fundamentally that there is no fixed reality. And I like to say, other than what you think of as, divine creator or the void, however you relate to creator source, that for everyday human beings, you and me, that there's nothing fixed and solid, including whatever we've told ourselves about ourselves, the behavior from the past. So I think what you're bringing up, because that, what I say, is a very limiting, let's not call it detrimental, a limiting viewpoint that psychological behaviorism, that school, gave us, because it said your future is going to be based on your past. And this is something that's just not the truth, okay? Even though we can point to evidence for it. Now, what's the difference between that being the truth and that being what I would consider a tendency, or what I call in quantum think, I use the term least action pathway, least action pathway, borrowed from science, taught to me by Fred Alan Wolf, my mentor in quantum physics, dear friend, and who wrote the foreword to Do Quantum Think. But he, that term, least action pathway, the least creative action, the least consciously aware action, the most mechanical action. The reason I use that, I say, what keeps us from thinking from infinite possibility? You want to live your dreams, but you're hung up on whatever has happened to you in the past. Well, what's keeping us there are these least action pathway thoughts, emotional patterns, thinking patterns, behavioral patterns, story patterns that we've told ourselves. And so I use that term, least action pathway. Don't give it any meaning. It's a vestige of, guess what? The mechanical worldview, the old worldview, that at that point in the evolutionary cycle of us as human beings, that maybe we became mechanical too. So, what do you do with the least action pathway? You just notice it, interrupt it, and then go to what? The dynamic that we've been divinely bestowed with by human birthright that enables us to create anything in our world. And what is that dynamic? The dynamic of intent, the focused attention. And I use intent I make a distinction between intent and intention. Intention being an end goal that follows a certain path. Intent I use in the more shamanic sense of the activation of the energy intelligent field, or you could say our personal resonance, or any resonance, because we're interconnected with everything else through these invisible energy intelligent conscious fields. And this is very important to living your dreams, to understanding, how to use these very simple dynamics that we've been born with. So I went off of topic a little bit, but the idea is that if you have a thought about who you have ever been, or what you've ever done or not done, accomplished or not accomplished in your past, I think very important in today's changing world, especially, we need you to be living, to step into your own personal leadership, to step into your own personal strength, to step into your own personal worldly purpose and start to recognize it and have fun with it. So we need to be able to interrupt those least action pathways, and then I say, no meaning, just, that's just a least action pathway, a vestige of the old worldview conditioning that we're now taking the leap beyond. And so what's my intent now going forward? And so this is the simplicity, Lynn, the ease of quantum thinking. The old world view was an analytical world view. If we could analyze the parts of the machine, what are they made of, reduce them down to their constituent parts, figure out how they work, then we can predict and control nature. So what did that give us in our thinking? It gave us the ability to analyze, which is great. So we know ordinary logic. We have analysis. But if you want to see, why am I the way that I am today? In quantum thinking, it's an irrelevant question because you'll never know, really. You could make up anything. This is the good point, right? Reality, how we relate to anything in the world or ourselves or our circumstances is the one area that we have 100% sovereignty over. We have circumstances that we may not be able to have controlled. Maybe if you go into soul consciousness, you could figure out you picked it, but maybe not. But just in the ordinary sense, you may not be able to control your circumstances, but you always can have command, not control, over how you choose to be related to those circumstances. And it's in this relationship where our power lies. So you'll never get to the, why was I doing this? Because my mother told me when I was 2 years old. You don't need it. You can interrupt that pattern anytime, any place. It sounds too easy, right?
Right.
People, because in our Western world especially, we have so much vested, and not just in the, maybe even we're in the United States right now, maybe other countries, they don't have so much vested. I used to have this boyfriend, my husband won't mind saying, who was from da Roma, Italian boyfriend. And I was at the time studying the psychology and everything. He said, why are the Americans are so, hung up in all these psychology? What's the difference? Just live your life. So honestly, we can choose. When you say you create your reality, there is really such, I don't want to say absolute, but there's truth in it, in the sense that reality is malleable, and that what we focus on, we energize. What we energize, we expand. We know this is one of the quantum principles. And so when you can make a distinction, and I know you want to be, I'm doing a lot of the talking here, but I don't know, I'm on a roll.
Fine.
But when you can make a very important distinction between a least action pathway thought that Alan and I call a thought that visits from the surrounding mind field, what I now for fun call the thoughtosphere, and a thought that you originate, then you get free immediately because you realize you're not stuck with any thought that you have just because it happens to come into your mind field.
So can you give us a little bit of a demonstration of how we might be able to do that? And, I want to say just, there's no question about how passionate you are about your subject matter. It's just great. I love watching you. I just love your passion. But if you could, how can we do that? How can we distinguish between a thought that we initiate and a thought that visits?
Okay, let's do it right now, right?
Okay.
We'll just take 1 minute and do it.
Okay,
now, wherever anyone is sitting, of course, if you're driving, well, you can do it, but don't close your eyes. Okay, but, wherever you are sitting or you're watching this, let me take a little sip of water. It's good to close your eyes to do this. Again, obviously, you're smart, so you're not going to do anything foolish. But let's just close our eyes for a moment and take a comfortable posture, which, as a former, one of my, I call it accidental careers along the way as a professional photographer, that when you can be relaxed by holding the small of your back up straight, letting your shoulders drop naturally. And just becoming aware of the in and out, inhale and exhale of your breath very gently. Don't try to do any kind of, forced breathing. By the way, when you're being photographed, I'll give you a little tip. This is the way to hold yourself, because there's actually a difference in the face based on how you hold your posture. And you can actually lean against things, you can sit this way. But another very important spiritual reason for doing it is that when you're meditating, that when you hold your spine in that position where you're holding it upright, or some meditation teachers will say, visualize that there's, a golden thread holding up from your crown chakra and going up, however you say it, is that this allows for the Kundalini energy, for the Sanskrit word Shakti, to travel and do, every energies are entities that have intelligence, and it allows for the energy to move freely along the column of the chakras where they travel. So a little bit of outer world, inner world on holding yourself straight. So now that we're in this position, just close your eyes for a moment and just watch your thoughts. And again, certain meditation practices called mindfulness. But in this case, we're watching for something specific. Now watch for a thought, that whatever thought is coming in, and just examine it for a second. Did you choose that thought freely? Did you initiate it? Or did it just float in? And just notice, and just let it fly by. Maybe it's a judgment about what I'm saying, or maybe it's a free association about what I'm saying, or maybe you're thinking about, I'm hungry, I would like to have lunch. Whatever that thought is, just let it come in. Notice whether you chose it or whether it just visited, and let it go out. Now, initiate a thought. And we could do it this way. Let's use for a moment the power of intent and say, what is my intent in watching this video with Lynn and Dianne right now? What is my intent? Because something is always being created. It's either being created based on the default patterns of the past, whether it's the good, the bad, the ugly, or the sublime, or it's being created by you consciously with the awareness that you're creating it. And whatever I've studied, whether it has been from the teachings of indigenous cultures, whether it's been sound healing therapy, whatever it's been, whether it's been any lineage of yoga, everyone always acknowledges that your intent is very important. If you go and get any kind of healing modality, whatever you are doing, and we teach our corporate clients, if you're going into a meeting consciously, with awareness, silently to yourself, or you can express it in the meeting, what is my intent for the meeting? And the intent, the way that we would like to have you think of it, is always for the relational field. So for this interview, for this A Bright Horizon series, you could say, my intent, here would be an example, always said as if it already is that way in the omnipresent tense. You're activating the field when you do this. My intent is that all of us are coming to such exciting awakenings that we're collectively and individually creating a better world together. That's a statement of intent. It's said as if it already is. It's said for everyone. It's said for the relational field, because mostly that's where things get created. So now, if you still have your eyes closed, or I open mine because I'm thinking, that is a consciously generated thought with awareness. Now, I made it into a long statement of intent. Everyone can open their eyes now. But you can see that if you have a thought that I call, in Do You Quantum thing, wretched self syndrome, it's got to go. Any thought that you have, and the reason I use that term is because one of my great teachers was from the Siddha Yoga lineage. He has since, moved out of the physical realm, Swami Muktananda. And he said, the biggest sin is to think of yourself as a wretched little creature in any way. So I adapted from Muktananda, wretched self syndrome. It's got to go, because this is one of those least action pathways of our culture, where we come in thinking, oh my God, I've got things that are wrong with me. I've got to block them. I've got to get rid of them. How do I get rid of them? Well, what happened to the spiritual wisdom that says, in the now moment, you've never been in this moment before. It's new. It's fresh. Whatever you have your attention on now is generating your future, is creating your resonance. So going back to, what do we do with these wretched self-syndrome thoughts that I'm not good enough, or any variation on that theme? And I haven't mastered this myself totally. So, but this is something I live in, and I'm lucky enough. I'm living with Alan Collins for nearly 27 years. We'll be married 25 in September, and working together. So we've had to work out a lot of these things, because relationships can develop least action pathways, patterns of the relationship, the third entity. But when one of us goes into a least action pathway, self-deprecating thought, Lynn, or, a worrisome thought, a fearful thought, a doubt. And, Alan will look at me and say, well, why would you want to be in that reality? And because I get this, right, deep within me, I go, you're right. And then shift out of it and say, okay, what is my intent now? It doesn't mean that you won't be experiencing the emotional response to that thought and the meaning that you gave that thought, that wretched self-syndrome thought. It doesn't mean that you won't experience the fear, the sadness, the longing, whatever it is. However, when you shift your thinking in the form of intent, you start to transform the feeling tone of your being. That's your resonance. And the more you get into the habit of learning and becoming facile, becoming adept, mastering these 5 natural faculties of mind and these principles and how they work together, then it becomes just as easy as I did it with Alan. It doesn't mean that I'm not crying. It just means I know this is going to pass, and how it passes is that I make a choice to initiate a new thought. a new intent.
Wow, thank you so much for that answer. I think it's been highlighted throughout this entire summit, and I'm so glad that we're ending it on this note, which is that you have the conscious choice to create whatever you want in the future. And if there's only one thing, if there's only one thing, and I hope there's many, many more, but if there's only one thing that people get from this entire summit, is really that notion that you are in control, you are in complete control, no one else is in control, but that you're the only one that's in control of your life, and that you can create through conscious choice whatever life it is you want to create. So I thank you for that. I thank you so much for that. And we're nearing the end of our time together. And I know that you've given some really generous gifts so that really can get our audience much more clarity and thought on the topics that you were talking about today on quantum thinking. So can you describe this a little bit for us?
Yes, I will. Let me give you the URL for the gift. It's DianneCollins.com, and it's Dianne with two N's, DianneCollins.com/success-gift. That's a short dash. So it's SUCCESS-GIFT. DianneCollins.com, success-gift. And on that page, Lynn and everyone, I'm happy to offer this, are 3 audios, MP3 downloadable, and it's an introduction to Quantum Think. It's actually part of the Quantum Think, what we call the Quantum Think Audio Coach program, which are the 10 core distinctions of the Quantum Think system. But it's the introduction and the first 2 Quantum Think distinctions that I call the principles in the Quantum Think system. The first one is holistic and holographic, and you'll get an experience from it of a real experience of integrating your life so that you're not trying to balance parts. You can start to see it integrated. There's a practice for that. And observer-created reality is the second audio. Observer effect, you may have heard about in quantum principles when people talk about it. And I call it in Quantum Think that we're living in an observer-created reality. And we've been talking about that kind of the whole time. What I say it in simply, what you bring is what you get. So the assumptions, beliefs, ideas that we bring to a situation are shaping the resonant field, are shaping our relationships, are shaping our results, are shaping our actions, and therefore all of our results, whether it's how you feel internally, whether it's a relational result with another person or group, or whether it's an outer world, hard result, houses, money, and cars, or anything you want to accomplish. So these audios literally can alter your life. If you just listen, they're only 20 minutes, and then practice. The other thing that I have on that page is 1 chapter from Do You Quantum Think? New Thinking That Will Rock Your World. That's my book. And it's chapter 11, which is not about bankruptcy. I don't know why I said that, but it's chapter 11. That is, the old world thinking is bankrupt. Now we have flourishing in the new world view. It's chapter 11, and it's called Intuition and Non-Locality, and it's all about learning to use our intuition as in a disciplined way, so that the discipline vanishes and you're just living a magical life. And that the non-locality, this is what the science called non-local mind field, where the intuition that we've been born with connects us in wherever we need information, so that in this accelerated pace world of uncertainty where we're undergoing all these changes, I know we didn't have time to talk about that, but where the use of intuition is essential now for living a life of ease and gracefulness, so that instead of the old world, linear, step by step, get everything up, lined up, how am I going to catch up, things are moving too fast, you jump to that intuitive state and decisions become easier, pulling in information, connecting to resources you need, the people you need to accomplish what your heart's desires. That all becomes easier when you become masterful with your own intuitive faculty. So those are the gifts on DianneCollins.com/success-gift.
Well, thank you so much, Dianne. And for everyone in the audience, I've made it easier on you. You can just either go to Dianne's URL, or you can just click on the link below that says "Grab your free gift," and you'll go right to that. You'll get right to that site and get your 3 audios, which I think will just be very, very interesting. I've already looked at them and read them and heard them. And chapter 11 of her book, Do You Quantum Think? It's Intuition and Non-Locality. And for more information about Dianne and her book and her background and all the work that she's doing, which is a ton of work these days, visit her website at www.diannecollins.com. So Dianne, wow, I mean, geez, we didn't get to purpose, but I think we went exactly, I always believe that the conversation goes exactly where it's meant to go, and I think some really great advice, and thank you so much for the meditation, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Lynn. Lynn Zimba, you are doing such a marvelous job with this. I am really impressed. And I congratulate you on all the work you're doing and your own vision for your life, and for being a catalyst for others to live their vision too. So thank you so much for the honor of being with you.
Oh, thank you so much. You're really making me fill up with tears now. It's been fun putting this on, and I just really am so grateful to every single expert for spending the time with me, and for just participating, and for spreading the word, and for helping people in their journey of transformation. It's just all the support people can get is amazing. Thank you so much, Dianne, and you just have a great day.
You too. All the best.
Namaste. I'm so grateful to Dianne Collins for taking the time out of her busy schedule to visit with us today. She's obviously passionate about helping you understand the quantum worldview and helping you apply the principles of quantum thinking to your everyday life, so that you can experience quantum shifts right now, easily and effortlessly. And I strongly recommend that you get her book, Do You Quantum Think? New Thinking That Will Rock Your World, because it will rock your world. And begin thinking with intent. What do you want to create? Set the intention in this moment for the reality that you want to create for your life, and then watch the miracles begin to happen.